The singer-songwriter Dar Williams has a song called After All. Any of you know Dar Williams' work? Out There Live is a great album. The opening lyrics are, "Go ahead, push your luck, find out how much love the world can hold." She continues, "Once upon a time I had control and I reined my soul in tight. So I stopped the tide, I froze it up inside, and it felt like a winter machine. That you go through and then you catch your breath and winter starts again, and everyone else is springbound." Have you ever felt like that? That you were trapped in a winter machine and everyone else is springbound? When I heard that the theme of this year's annual Unitarian Universalist Association's General Assembly was Love Reaches Out, Williams's lyrics kept coming to mind. Go ahead, push your luck, find out how much love the world can hold. And as you heard from Hannah and Sandy and Sue and Ben, we gathered, my wife Megan was there as well, we gathered with almost 5,000 other Unitarian Universalists last week in Providence, Rhode Island at the annual UU General Assembly. It's all over the country. It's in Portland next year, then I think Kansas City, then Ohio, then it's in New Orleans. So it's in different places, but this is one of the closest it'll be for a few years. The final count was 4,754 UUs registered, including 316 youth. Needing a convention center and a sports stadium to contain the number of UUs present is a good reminder of the size of our movement at the continental level, coming in at more than 1,000 congregations nationwide, as well as in Canada and around the world there are more. And meeting in New England, the site of our historic roots as a movement on this continent, is always a good reminder of how venerable our tradition is. Whereas this congregation here in Frederick emerged in the 1960s out of what is known as the Fellowship Movement, a lay-led, bottom-up, grassroots movement of birthing new UU congregations, which, as you heard from Phyllis, democracy is important. That is great. But the first meeting house of what became the first Unitarian church in Providence was built in 1723. And although Providence had that congregation of Providence has had a long history of liberal theology, it didn't become officially Unitarian until the early 1800s. But even in the early 1700s, their minister was criticized for not being evangelical enough and for preaching damnable good works. Because to Calvinists, of course, who emphasize that salvation comes not through human effort, but through God's grace alone, our UU emphasis on social justice, on human beings creating a better world, that is preaching damnable good works. But as the Unitarian minister James Freeman Clark, if some of you remember my sermon from a few weeks ago on Margaret Fuller, they were best friends throughout their life. So James Freeman Clark, a UU minister, put in his 1886 5 points of Unitarian faith that we UUs have long emphasized salvation by character. So not Reformation sola gratiae, by grace alone, but salvation by character, by who you are and what you do. That how we choose to live our lives really matters. That what we do with our free will can really make a difference for others and for this world. And the character trait that we UUs historically have most emphasized is love. As the Unitarian minister James Blake wrote a few years after Clark in 1894, love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It's no coincidence that the theme of Love Reaches Out was chosen for this year's General Assembly, which is on the 5-year anniversary of our nationwide Standing on the Side of Love campaign, which started in 2009. The Standing on the Side of Love slogan, some of you may have seen it, it's the big yellow banners. Have you ever seen that? That's the signal mark of the Standing on the Side of Love campaign. It was inspired by the outpouring of love and support that came from the larger Knoxville, Tennessee community in the wake of the tragic 2008 shooting at our UU congregation in Knoxville. Some of you may remember those headlines. They were targeted for their liberal stance on justice issues. That community's affirmation of that congregation, the outpouring of love and support over against hate intolerance, and exclusion inspired our ongoing emphasis as a larger UU movement that yes, we are the love people, standing on the side of love and for the inclusion and peace, liberty, and justice for all. As my colleague, the Reverend Peter Frederick, said at General Assembly this past week, that means that we stand on the side of love, not on the sidelines of love. It means that love reaches out, that love is a verb, that love is much more about what you do, how you act, how you treat those around you, than just how you allegedly feel inside. Love is a verb. Love reaches out. And perhaps the biggest takeaway for me personally from General Assembly was the emphasis that love reaches out means partnering to create social change with those who you may differ from politically and theologically. During the 7 years I spent as an associate pastor in Northeast Louisiana, I saw this as a reality. I was able to work with African American ministers and congregations who were at the opposite end of the spectrum theologically from the congregation that I served, but who I agreed with about working for greater racial justice in our community. There are evangelical congregations who agree with us, actually, about climate change. So that's the sort of work that I want to be more intentional about here in Frederick, coming out of General Assembly. Love reaches out rather than staying isolated only with those that agree with us 100%. So I'll be talking with some of my colleagues in the coming weeks and months about the ways we might be able to get involved with what is called congregational-based community organizing. Here our president did a little bit of that early on. I have already learned in the past week that there are UU congregations in our region, in Montgomery County, in Howard County, in Baltimore County, in Virginia and DC, already doing some of this work quite successfully, and that have had positive experiences with congregational-based community organizing. So I'm interested in learning from them about best practices and what may or may not work here in Frederick. Related to our ongoing justice work, every 2 years there's a vote at General Assembly to select a new Congregational Steady Action Initiative. So this doesn't in any way limit what individuals and congregations and groups do additionally, but it's saying, can we pick one thing as a movement to particularly focus on so that we do at least one thing as opposed to doing 1,000 things that maybe disperse us. So the CSAI that we selected was, and the CSAI is then, so we do it every 2 years, and then we focus on it for 4 years. Recent CSAIs have included reproductive justice, immigration, ethical eating, and peacemaking, and the new CSAI, as Sandy referred to, is escalating inequality, so the wealth gap. So another part of Love Reaches Out that we'll be exploring in coming years is reaching out across class barriers. I began this morning with the opening line from Dar Williams' song to go ahead, push your luck, find out just how much love the world can hold. As she moves toward the song's conclusion, she writes, so go ahead, push your luck, say what it is you gotta say to me, and we'll push on into that mystery, because you don't know what's gonna happen when love reaches out, right? You don't know, as Hannah said, is that person going to say, yeah, I think I'm going to become a UU? Are they going to say, no, actually I'm Southern Baptist? You don't know. So you push on into that mystery when love reaches out. And she writes, and it'll push right back, and there are worse things than that. Because for every price and every penance that I could think of, it's better to have fallen in love than never to have fallen at all. And I don't think we should limit our understanding of Williams' song just to romantic love. Love Reaches Out is also about taking the risk of pursuing your passion, of shipping your art, what you love, out into the world, whatever that looks like for you, your gifts, what makes you feel fully alive, fully engaged with this world and those around you. That's also part of what it looks like for love to reach out. In the coming days and weeks, I invite you to experiment with what it might feel like to use Love Reaches Out as a mantra. If you find yourself with that inclination that, I should probably go introduce myself to that person standing over in the corner, I invite you to remember, love reaches out. I want that voice to speak from the back of your head. If after exchanging harsh words with a loved one or a colleague in a stressful situation, if you find yourself wondering if you should be the first one to say, I'm sorry, I invite you to remember that love reaches out. Love reaches out means releasing that clenched fist, opening your heart, and extending your arms wide. See what it feels like to go ahead, to push your luck, and find out how much love this world can hold. Our closing hymn helps us to envision what such a world might look like, a world shaped by love reaching out. Originally, this song was about hope in the next world, but as you've heard me say before, the Universalist half of our UU heritage, reach for your teal hymnals, not your gray hymnals, I'll get to that in a second. The Universalist half of our UU heritage shifted from a rejection of hell and the next world to saying, let the next world take care of itself, let's love the hell out of this world. And that's where you get Universalists like Claire Martin, founded the Red Cross. And we learned that it's possible to transfer hope for life in the next world to hope in future generations, to hope in our grandchildren, through the world that we shape and that they will inherit. So in that spirit, I invite you to rise with me. Turn to 10:18, different than what it says. Turn to hymn 10:18. Come and go with me to that land. We'll sing the first 3 verses. 10:18.